The next morning when I went to work, I was a little afraid of what happened the day before, but I visited Ella once again. Ella, I'm sorry about yesterday. I want to apologize. I offered my apologies to Ella carefully. But Ella has said something unexpected to me.
Benjamin, I've been thinking all night about what you said.
I was quite surprised at Ella's reaction, which I had never expected, but I collected myself and asked her calmly. Really? So? Then Ella, who looked around for a moment, rose from her seat and pulled my sleeve and said,
This is not the right place to talk. Let's move to a quiet place.
I nodded and took Ella to my lad. Ella seeing the new door in my room, then she said with an apologetic look on her face,
I'm sorry, I was angry yesterday without realizing it.
That's all right. It's nothing to worry about. However, you thought about my words? Ella nodded slowly.
Yes, I thought about it all night.
What? You didn't sleep all night?
Yes, because it wasn't like you were lying.
At Ella's words, I tried hard to hold back tears that seemed to pour down. However, no matter how hard I tried, tears eventually flowed from my eyes, and Ella took out a handkerchief with a surprised look on her face. And Ella wiped away my tears with a handkerchief, and asked in a friendly voice,
What's wrong with you all of a sudden? Why are you crying?
Nothing, because you believed me. Then Ella took my hand, and said,
I'm sorry, but it would have been hard for anyone to believe such a thing easily.
Ella carefully examined my expression, and said again,
I still believe that Genotech Robotics is a good company. But if what you said is true, what should I do then if Genotech Robotics is really doing something that threatens humanity?
I looked at Ella in silence. She was looking at me with confused eyes. And that look in her eyes, once again broke my heart, which is full of hypocrisy. No, ignore everything I said. Just pretend you didn't hear it. But Ella shook her head.
Tell me, Mr. Benjamin. I want to help humanity. What should I do to make everyone happy?
I couldn't answer anything. Ella looked at me with a sad expression, and waited for my answer. But my answer was fixed from the beginning anyway. As the ugly tears filled with lies dried up, I said to Ella, we need to bring down Genotech Robotics. Then it's all over. Ella looked at me with a surprised look.
We? Two of you and me? How's that possible? Genotech Robotics is a mega-sized company. It's like hitting a rock with an egg.
I persuaded Ella with a more serious look. Why would I tell you this story? This is something that only you can do. Ella didn't seem to understand what I meant yet.
Benjamin, can you tell me more easily?
I took a deep breath and asked Ella. Ella, what are you in charge of at Genotech Robotics?
I'm in charge of storing encrypted core technologies and research results, sent from Genotech Labs to the system core of Genotech Robotics.
That's it. But Ella still looked clueless, so I explained to her once again. There are many lawmakers in Congress who are negative about our company. They want to stop Genotech Robotics from any more approach to God's realm. But they still have no justification. Ella looked at me with shaky eyes. I spoke to her in a more earnest voice. The records that Ella is in charge of can give them a good cause. The records of the ugly truth of Genotech Robotics. Only then did Ella seem to understand what I meant. But she shook her head and said,
It's impossible. As I said, the records come to me encrypted, so I haven't even seen the contents. And once it's transferred to the system core, no one, not just me, can access to the records.
Ella expressed reluctance. But I couldn't give up here. Ella, you're a hacking expert. You could hack into the system core. But Ella shook her head once again.
It's impossible. It's not only extremely difficult to hack into the core of the system itself, but even if I succeed in hacking, it's impossible to access the data, unless I have a physical access key.
I looked at Ella for a moment. Her eyes were full of mixed emotions. And I could never miss this opportunity. Then is it possible if you have that key? Then Ella, who was thinking for a while, looked at me and said,
At least we can try. But it is Dr. Catherine, the Chief Technology Officer, who has the key, so how can we?
At that moment, I grabbed Ella's hand and said, I'll get the key. Ella looked at me with surprised eyes.
Benjamin,
I'll get that key somehow, so you hand over the data to me. Can you do it? Ella looked at me in silence, and I looked straight into her eyes too. Then Ella's cheeks began to turn red, and she nodded still.
yes, I'll try.
We looked into each other's eyes, holding hands in silence. And I spoke to Ella in a quiet voice. Please, Ella, the future of mankind depends on you. And a few days later, the day finally came. I visited Ella, and gave her Catherine's access key.
I can't believe this, Benjamin, how the hell did you get this key?
Ella looked at me in disbelief. I said, handing the key to her hand. Now, it's your turn. Ella, who took the helm, took a few deep breaths to see if she was nervous. And she finally looked at me with a firm look on her face, and said,
Yes, leave it to me. I'll make it for humanity, or for you.
Looking at Ella, with a determined expression, I felt as if my heart was being torn apart. And Ella told me if she didn't know how I felt.
Hey, Mr. Benjamin.
Huh? What's wrong?
Can you hug me for once? I'm a little scared.
I hugged Ella as hard as I could, before she finished her sentence. I cursed this world with Ella in my arms, and I cursed Genotech Robotics. And more than anything else, I cast a curse on my repugnant self.
Thank you, then I'll be back.
Ella left. Tears flowed endlessly from my eyes, which sat on the floor, and wrapped my head in both hands. I prayed earnestly to God. I prayed earnestly for Ella to come back to me, and says that she couldn't do such a thing. But I forgot. In the world I live in, God is the Genotech Robotics. After the hellish waiting time, Ella finally came back. A smile slowly spread on Ella's face approaching me. And she told me,
Benjamin, I did it.
"Oh, no way." I held out a trembling hand to Ella. "What about the data?"
Here you are.
It was the very moment when Ella smiled brightly and handed me the data.
All right. That is enough.
With the words, Catherine appeared, and heavy robot guards followed her heavily armed.
Get Ella.
When Catherine's orders were given, the robot guards immediately surrounded Ella and crushed her to the floor, and causing her to become immobilized. Ella couldn't say anything, and just looked around with frightened eyes. And Catherine approached me.
Good work, Benjamin.
I said to Catherine in a weak, trembling voice. I'm tired. I want to go back and rest. Catherine nodded silently, and I walked silently, just silently, with my gaze lowered toward the floor. And the moment my step passed by Ella's side, Ella asked,
Benjamin, what the hell is going on? I don't know what's what. Please help me.
I spoke in a feeble voice, leaving behind Ella's cry of terror. I'm sorry, Ella. I'm really sorry.
What do you mean by that? Benjamin, help me. Do not leave me behind. I'm scared.
That was Ella's last look I saw. A few days later, I attended a meeting of senior executives of Genotech Robotics, with Catherine. Catherine began her explanation in front of the executives.
As experiments, conducted by research engineer Benjamin show, Ella, the next-generation prototype artificial organism, has come incredibly close to humans, in terms of empathy and emotional abilities.
Catherine, who paused for a moment, and looked around the executives, continued in a voice full of confidence.
In addition, Ella's computational and information storage capabilities are already far ahead of humans. And Ella's muscles, which are bioprinted with new technology, have many times stronger muscles than humans.
An executive, who was listening to Catherine's explanation, asked her,
But according to the results of this experiment, Ella eventually betrayed us, right? No matter how capable Ella is, how can we trust and use it, if it has a reliability problem?
Other executives then agreed with him.
I feel the same way. Moreover, in terms of price, bioprinting technology costs too much, compared to robots. I think it's too early.
But Catherine spoke to them in a determined voice.
Of course, it is true that some problems have been found in the experiment conducted by Benjamin. But, if we fix the problems one by one in this way, I'm sure it won't be long before our Genotech Robotics launches a commercialized artificial human.
When Catherine's explanation was finished, the chairman of Genotech, who had been watching the whole situation without saying a word until then, said with a satisfied look on his face, Our Genotech Robotics is a company that overcame death, the fate of mankind. If we create a new life this time, we will no longer have our competitors on this planet. Dr. Catherine, proceed as you please. The chairman, who got up from his seat after speaking, was about to leave the meeting, and told Catherine, Oh, and remove that incomplete existence. There can be no failure for our Genotech Robotics. Do you understand what I am saying? Catherine replied, smiling still at the chairman's words.
Don't worry, Chairman. I already extracted experimental data from Ella, and after that, I immediately got rid of Ella.
The chairman once again nodded with satisfaction. Really? That's Dr. Catherine. It's amazing how smart you are. I sat there without a word, until everyone left the conference room like that. The longing and guilt for Ella poured out of control into my empty heart. And I can no longer tell which one is more incomplete existence. Ella, or us.